This is Geek Gab with your host, Dornall, and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. Geek Gab for Monday, October 21st, 2024. And today we're going to be talking about 1 million years BC. That is so long ago that even I don't remember what was going on that year. I was around for it, don't get me wrong, I just don't remember. Um, I don't
That
think
long ago, huh? I think you would have remembered the dinosaurs, Daddy Warpig, or the woolly mammoths, or whatever else was there back then.
there were giant iguanas. There was a giant tarantula eating a giant ant with Triceratops, Allosaurus, Tyrannosaurus Rex, a massive pterodactyl. Um, there was, it was so awesome. But we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. But first, um, Dornall,
Hey,
uh, we have, do we have any news? I have some news. Oh boy, do I have some.
I have a couple things I'd like to talk about. We can do news first.
I,
Yeah, if you guys missed us last week, I was off and celebrating my first anniversary, so that's way better than hanging out with everybody on the internet. So
So
that's why we were
nuts
out.
to all of you is what he's saying.
That's right.
Nuts.
I probably should have come up with a nicer way of saying that, but yeah, that's about it. There's a bunch of crazy stuff going on in the world and going on in our nerdy hobbies. Um, we don't have to go into too much detail, but
I've got some stupid news.
let's.
Vandenberg Air Force Base has been a launch site for rockets from time immemorial. It's in California. And one of the places it's a launch site for is SpaceX, Elon Musk's space company that has been putting Boeing and NASA to shame. Both Boeing and NASA have been completely embarrassed by SpaceX. And as I don't know, we may have covered this. Boeing Starliner brought two NASA astronauts up to the International Space Station and then broke down. And it broke down so hard, they thought it was going to be permanently attached to the International Space Station and just permanently occupy one of only two docking ports on the station. So, fortunately, they were able to eject it because the software wasn't set up to do a manual eject, and they were afraid that updating the software was going to brick the entire capsule, so they weren't going to be able to eject it. My suggestion was that they install a disco ball and use it as a dance room for the International Space Station. They could just go in there and get some zero G boogie. But they didn't take my suggestion.
No,
Nobody listens to me. I I can't think of anything more exciting than a zero G boogie lounge in space. Just the
think
best.
of the acrobatic dance moves you could use.
I truly think it would have brought disco back, which is probably why they didn't do it. So, anyways, they managed to eject the capsule, and Boeing has nothing on the launch pad. NASA has nothing on the launch pad. So, who do they get to save their bacon?
The only other game in
SpaceX.
town.
Yep. So SpaceX is scheduled sometime later this year, I think in December, to go up and rescue 2 astronauts from the space station, from the International Space Station, and bring them back to Earth. And that's not even the news. That's just a setup for the news. See, all during this time, the federal government is waging warfare against SpaceX because, and this is political, and I apologize for this, they're upset that Elon Musk bought Twitter and renamed it X, and I still think he should have renamed it Social X, but that's just me. Because SpaceX, Social X, he's got a suite of companies. Instead, he just named it X. And he made it much more free speech, and it allowed a lot of people to have free speech on the internet that were otherwise being suppressed by the federal government, we now know. So they got upset, and they've been doing a lot of things to them. And this is the news. We just found out yesterday and today. One of the things they needed him to do is to check and see if rocket launches from Vandenberg Air Force Base were causing the SEALs near the base to become upset, thereby disrupting their mating habits, meaning that the population of SEALs would drop. And they specified the manner in which this test was to be carried out. Did you hear about this?
I did. I saw. There's a hilarious photo going around on the internet of a seal with some sort of device strapped to its head.
They had to kidnap 2 different SEALs at 2 different times, strap the SEALs to a board, put earphones, and they're trying to see if the SEAL is upset, right? They want to detect upsetness in the SEAL. So they have to kidnap the SEAL to detect upsetness, strap it to a board to detect upsetness, put earphones on the SEAL to detect upsetness. Are you seeing the problem here?
Oh, that's absurd.
I suspect, I project that perhaps the process of detecting upsetness might possibly be causing some upsetness in the SEAL.
Excuse me, sir, we're going to need you to traumatize this seal, and we're going to use that to determine if you're causing trauma to it.
And then they're playing sonic booms through the headset into the ears of the SEAL. And I'm not lying about this. This is just the perfect end to all this process. They have to interpret the expressions on the SEAL's face. They have to look at the face of the SEAL to decipher from its expressions whether or not it's upset. So they had to do this twice. Now, Elon Musk pointed out two things in a little clip of an interview I saw. One was that since launches at Vandenberg have been going on and going up, the seal population has been increasing. Which, if there was a correspondence there, it's not a negative correspondence, it's a positive or correlation there. It's not a negative correlation, it's a positive correlation, which would suggest that the sonic booms are, if anything, an aphrodisiac for the seals. Sonic booms are seal aphrodisiacs. I didn't know that. A piece of knowledge I was not previously aware of. The science has now established this. We love the science on this show, so, if you're breeding seals in captivity and they're refusing to mate, play some sonic booms over the loudspeakers and your captive seals will get jiggy with it.
Amazing.
Scientific knowledge.
Amazing.
Incredible knowledge. Just mind-blowing. And the second thing he pointed out is they had to release the seals back into the wild unharmed. When the seal gets back to his friends, Elon Musk pointed this out, what kind of story is he going to be telling his friends, right? I got captured. They took me into this room. They strapped me to a board. They played sounds into my ears, and then they just let me go, right? That's the seal equivalent of human beings telling alien abduction stories.
I was just about to say that. That's an alien abduction story.
I got captured. They took me up into this UFO and did anal probes, and then they just let me go. So it's possible that there is some interstellar FAA organization that for some reason, some perfectly innocent alien organization has no interest in bothering humans. They don't care about humankind. They bear us no ill will. They don't want to hurt us. They especially don't want to anal probe us. They're just being forced to because some pinhead alien bureaucrat at the Galactic Flight Control Administration is forcing them to see if some technology is causing humankind to not reproduce. So they're forcing this poor corporation to anal probe human beings.
I buy it.
That's just the theory now. Now, that theory is actually my addition, but it fits with the known facts. So when you hear an anal probe alien abduction story, just remember it might not be absolute nonsense. There might be a kernel of truth to it. That's the news.
Terrifying.
This is the world you live in now.
Yeah, when people say government's not the solution, it's the problem, that's the kind of stuff they're thinking of.
So that's my news. But
do a seal study.
What news did you have?
Oh, let's see. Just a little bit of stuff in the RPG sphere. I wanted to give a shout out to the chat. Bradford Walker's in the chat. His his Substack is still going really well. The narrative around his uh, patron Dungeons and Dragons game is really interesting. There's a lot of hullabaloo over Broser, a new Bronstein uh, book with some fantastic essays from Jeff Road Johnson. I wanna table that though. I wanna get some of these guys on and talk to them about it on a future
I
show. I think that'd be great.
I bought a paper copy. I have it right here.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I got a copy too, and I showed my wife. She said, "Is that a coloring book?"
it is in black and white.
Fantastic art by line art by Skylar Hernstrom. Makes you want to go get your kids' crayons and get to work.
I guess it
Um,
can be a coloring book. Oh, you know what I did to
any
my
book's a coloring book
DMG?
if you put your mind to it.
You know those transfers they used to have where you could scribble on them and then they would leave like colored pictures on whatever you wanted so you could scribble characters on it and stuff like that.
I think
Where they
so.
had little explosions. They were transfers. And they were just these thin, filmy pieces of plastic, and they were on the back of a thicker piece of plastic. So you would just take a pencil or whatever and scribble, or a pen and scribble on the thicker piece of plastic, and it would press down and transfer the thin piece of plastic to the paper. And you could make these, they would have like mutants from X-Men, and you could make your own fights, put the characters where you wanted and make them seem like they were fighting or whatever. They would have GI Joe. They would have Barbie or whatever for the girls. Um, this is like a 80s, late 70s technology.
Hmm.
Um, so in the late 80s, my brothers and sisters had some of these transfers. And I took the transfers. One day we were driving in the car, um, and I took the little explosions and I put them in my DMG and PHB and spiffed it up.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
that one picture of Emrakul the Chaotic, where he's riding through the town and he points his finger and the fireball or death ray or whatever flies out and hits someone.
Yeah,
Uh, there was one of the transfers that fit exactly over that. It was a little, explosion with a ray going back. So I put a transfer over that, so it was nice and colored. So, you know, we made the whole book look nice. You were talking about coloring.
that sounds
Uh,
snazzy. I think more game books should do that. They'd see more use that way because nobody
um,
nobody seems to play them.
all these modern game books are art books now, and they seem to not even be really intended for play. They seem to be looked at. If I ever publish a role playing game, I'm going to publish two versions. One is a nice spiffy art book, and the other one is a black and white book published on that crappy pulp paper that the DMG and the Player's Handbook were published on, so that will encourage people to say, this is what you take notes on, this is what you pencil things on, this is what you underline, this is what you highlight, this is what you run your game on, this is the book that is meant to be marked up and noted up and filled in, because this is your your game. You're supposed to learn it and understand it and play with it. You're not supposed to treat it like it's a piece of art. It's a coffee table book.
I love it. That's a fantastic idea, really.
But then also have the coffee table book that's more expensive for people who like the fancy full colored art.
And we need that. We need more games, more books that are sort of meant to be a manual. You're supposed to write in it, and we were always taught and brought up, don't mess with your pages, don't eat near books, don't do any of this. Like dog-earing a page or underlining a passage was the most horrible thing you could do to a book. But uh, a game book, back in high school, we played second edition. We had house rules written in. We had prices scratched out and changed. We had our own sorts of things. Um, yeah, let's encourage people to make notes.
Yep.
And let the collectors have their art books.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
Okay. So any more news? I have one other piece of news, but I'll let
Go
you
ahead,
finish.
share. Oh, no, go
Um,
ahead and share.
so the new Dungeon Master's Guide has come out. I haven't heard much about it. Saw some bad art. There's a prom with Minsk in it, dancing with someone. Minsk, the warrior, no boo, just Minsk dancing in the middle of this prom, this dance.
Huh.
Typical stuff. And my comment on it, and I don't think this came across, my comment on it was, hey, did somebody drop their keys? Because I can sure hear them jangling.
Yeah.
Because obviously just putting Minsk in there is just for the audience of Baldur's Gate 3. It's jingling keys in front of people. That's what I meant for people who saw it on Twitter and wondered what the heck I was talking about. Jingling keys is the phrase for, hey, look at this, look at this. That's a character you like. It's a good book. It's a good book. It's a good book. But the other thing that came out today is they're bringing all of that, interviewing players before the game to see what they do and do not like in a game. And now they've got this special X sign players are supposed to put up in the middle of the game in case it goes too far for them. Um, and I'm calling it BD&DSM because one, that's where it comes from, and two, now the DM needs to know your safe word so they know how to stop in the game if it's getting too intense for you. D&D now has safe words.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, that convention came from BDSM. I don't know how to sugarcoat it, but that's really bizarre and sort of fitting that the types of players you're gonna find who want that sort of thing are the same types of weird degenerates that are gonna understand where it came from. And they're just gonna apply that. Oh, of course that makes sense. Everybody needs a safe space. We're here to explore themes of no. We're here to play a game. And none of that stuff belongs in the game. And if you're doing a healthy activity with people who are socially, I don't even mean socially adept, just normal people. You don't need anything like that at all. No reason for safe words or X signs or session zeros or anything like that. Why can't the assumption be that you're actually spending time with your friends or people who are otherwise able to communicate reasonably?
So they're taking all of this approach from the BDSM community, and that's the whips and handcuffs community for people who don't know. And I'm not going to get any more elaborate than that. Um, I'm not going to elaborate any more than that. And they're bringing them into the role playing hobby. Um, so it's BD and DSM, and that's
Love it.
what's in the Dungeon Master's Guide now for D&D. They've They
And
are they are
Dancing Minsk.
they're literally like pushing normal people, pushing this on normal people, and also pushing normal people out of the core game of the hobby. And it's disgusting.
Really
So,
is.
um, do you have any other news?
No, no. I have a quick game review, an oldie but goodie. Do you remember do you remember the game Dominion? And do you remember also playing Ascension, the deck building games?
Yes, I love Dominion. Dominion's quite possibly my favorite non role playing game.
And it's still one of the greats. It's still one of the best deck building games. Um, over the last weekend, I had a chance to play some games and had the opportunity to play one of those Dominion or Ascension clones. And surprisingly enough, it's a Dungeons and Dragons themed game. Do you remember when during the D&D 4.0 era, when they made a whole bunch of board games that tried to kind of sort of mimic what a dungeon delve was like?
Yes, I
Yeah,
played one.
this is from that era of games. So when I saw the box, I was really nervous. The game is called Tyrants of the Underdark, and it's got some cool looking dark elf lords and ladies, on the box cover. But I was pleasantly surprised because it turned out to be one of those deck building games, and it's a good one. It may not be as um, it may not have as many cards as Dominion. It may not have the variety, and it may not be as interesting as or as complicated as Ascension was. But um, the twist on it, unlike Dominion, Dominion has these boring point cards that do nothing in your hand except count towards your final score. And in Tyrants of the Underdark, instead, they bolted on a little area control game where you hire spies and soldiers to, capture different roads and cities underground. And, the more territory you control, the more points you score. So it added sort of a map control game where the players are jockeying for position on top of the interesting deck building game. So I do recommend it. I think it was pretty good. It's old-ish, 2008. I want to say 2008. Could be newer than that, but if you get a chance, totally play it.
So it's a dungeon delving game and a patron game.
It is neither. You wish.
Oh,
Um, it is an area control game where you're fighting over, spots on a map. And it is a deck building game. So you build your deck, and your deck contains all the soldiers and you know spider priests and everything that you need to win. And you play those cards and use them to take over different parts of the board.
okay.
That's the best I got without going into a full how-to video. But it's a lot like playing Ascension, and I know you remember that, and I know you remember Dominion.
Yes. And I liked Ascension too. I thought Ascension was fun. I didn't get to play it, very much, but I did like it. I think that I think the last time I played Ascension was in 2013.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Um, yeah, and
Time
the big thing
flies
with
when you're working.
the the big thing with Ascension was that, like I was saying, instead of boring points, you get cards that sort of generate points every time you play them. And the Tyrants of the Underdark use that same mechanic, only it's tied to a board where you're actually moving pieces around the board and trying to push other players out and hold on to your territory. So it's a little more interesting than just generating point tokens, and it made it really enjoyable.
Cool.
What else you got going on, DW?
The number, I've updated this occasionally, so since it's become a thing, I think I should continue it. The number of notes for the project right now is up to 31,271.
My word.
So
What was it last time we talked? I don't remember. I mean, that's a lot of
28,000
notes.
something.
28 something?
Yeah.
Whoa. Well, you did get an extra week of note taken, but I expect a full report next week or the next time we do a show.
But you know, things are going, things are developing, and that's all I can say right
Good.
now. So 1 million years BC.
Tell me about it.
Um,
I'm going to bring up the IMDb page for anybody watching on YouTube.
this is not being streamed anywhere, and it's also not being sold on any streaming service. So I had to buy it off of a Blu-ray disc on Amazon. And the Blu-ray disc comes with 2 discs in it. It comes with the US cut and the international cut. And it came out in 1966. The US cut cuts like 14 minutes of material that actually is, by any standards, pretty tame material nowadays. And I'm really angry because I watched the international cut DVD, and it was heavily garbled in many places. And so I was just not able to watch um, uh, the full movie.
Oh.
So that made it difficult. I mean, I was able to tell kind of what's going on, but it was just really difficult, and that was annoying to me.
Simon Hogwood wants to know if this is the archaic format known as discs.
Yes. It is a it's a sad thing in this day and age when things are not available to stream from some center, even to purchase to stream. It's shocking. It's baffling. So, 1 Million Years B.C. is a Hammer film from the famous Hammer horror studio, which made a bunch of movies with, Saruman and so on and so forth. Dracula, Dracula Lives, Dracula 1972, and so on. So they have a massive, reputation, and they make lower budget movies. This movie, the 2 stars of this movie are one, Raquel Welch, And this is the movie that made her a star because the famous poster of her um, in the uh, fur bikini that shows up in the Shawshank Redemption movie. Um, and then, went all around the world. It was just a chance photo taken by one of the on site photographers. One of the unit photographers just snapped a picture as she was standing on the rocks. It wasn't posed. She wasn't wasn't told to do anything. She just turned around, standing on the rocks. He snapped a picture, and it made her a superstar.
Oh, yeah?
um, yeah.
That's a cool story.
Um, they were shooting on the island of Tenerife, up, up, up in the volcanic area where there's no vegetation. They had some pots out there doing yellow smoke, which is, kind of a sulfurous smoke to make it look like the volcanic vents were still live, because this is, the raw, primitive million years ago when the earth was young and humanity lived in small tribes, only a few of them separate from each other, and so on. And so she was just up there and turned around, and they snapped it. Um, so Raquel Welch was one of the stars of the movie, and then that picture, when they snapped it, they decided to use it for the publicity. They drew it in for the poster, which is what we used, um, obviously for the show, and then it went around the world, and that made her a star. That started her career. She made this movie after Fantastic Voyage, which we reviewed some months ago. And then the other star of this movie was Ray Harryhausen, the ultra famous stop motion master. This movie was a remake of an earlier movie. In the earlier movie, for dinosaurs, what they used was real animals, iguanas and things like that, with and an alligator with uh, fins glued on their back, or horns glued on their heads, and they just filmed them that way.
That's
Well, in this
awesome.
movie, yeah, in this movie, they do use some real animals, and I talked about that earlier in the movie, but they also use a lot of stop motion puppets to get, you know, dinosaurs that look like dinosaurs in the movie. There's this great fight between a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a Triceratops. And if you watch the movie, you've got to understand that by our standards, the special effects, well, not our standards today, by the standards of, say, 2001, 2002, 2003, when they were doing Lord of the Rings, because CGI standards have dropped because all the studios are just overworked and they can't handle the amount of work that's being thrown at them. So they're all overworked, and CGI actually kind of looks worse in a lot of ways than it did 10 or 20 years ago. Um, but by the standards of, 10, 20 years ago, it looks much better than this movie does. But they used the technology of the time brilliantly and to its utmost and very, very skillfully. So I'm watching one fight between uh, a giant turtle and the cavemen. And the cavemen pick up a rock and throw it. So that's the live action. And then the turtle is a regular sized turtle that they've composited into the image so that it looks giant. And the rock comes into and they're both on screen at the same time. Small caveman on the right, large giant turtle on the left. The rock flies from the caveman, hits the turtle, and there's no transition. There's no glitch. There's nothing that looks fake in that. The ground the cavemen are standing on is a little bit different color. So that's where you can tell that that was, part of a blue screen. But the spears they throw don't suddenly glitch and look weird. And they don't suddenly jump up a little bit or jump down a little bit. So you can tell that that was obviously fake. Um, so within the limit of the technology of the time, they did a fabulous job with the special effects. Um, and I know that's a qualified praise, but the stop motion is incredible, which you would expect from Ray Harryhausen. And the transition between live action and a stop motion puppet. So when they have an Allosaurus later on that breaks into a human camp and dips down into the water where a man is thrashing around trying to get away from it, and it eats him. It grabs him around his middle and pulls him out of the water. And there's a transition from the live man in the water thrashing around to a puppet man in the mouth of the Allosaurus. And the puppet man looks like a puppet. You can definitely tell. Um, but the transition between those two is very skillfully handled. And at another time, they have a pterodactyl fly down and grab Raquel Welch and fly away with her. And what they have her do is she is behind a rock when the pteranodon comes down to grab her. She drops into a pit behind the rock, and then the pteranodon flies down behind the rock to grab her, and it comes up with a puppet. So they hide that transition with the rock so that you can't see it, which is a skillful way to do the transition. And it comes up, and it is obviously a puppet in the thing's hands, but they deploy that transition to hide any of the anything that would look bad in a very skillful manner. They know how to mask where the edges of those two frames, where the edges of those two styles of cinematography would meet, and they do it really well. Nowadays, in cinema with CGI, and I'm going to use Deadpool for an example. They have Colossus, and the actor, and I'm going to use Deadpool 2. The guy playing Colossus is big. He's huge, but he's not as huge as the actual Colossus CGI character. So what they have him do is they have him wear this long pole with a silver ball on top. So when everybody looks him in the eyes, instead of looking the actor in the eyes, they have to look up at this silver ball because that's where Colossus is going to be. And then this silver ball is, where their sight line is. Well, back in the day when they're doing this, giant dinosaur that they're fighting, or they're doing this pteranodon flying over their heads, they're doing literally the exact same thing. Ray Harryhausen is in the back of a truck, and he is in the back of the truck, and he is waving this stick around. And the top of the stick is where the dinosaur is going to be. And they are looking at the top of that stick when they're throwing rocks, or when they're throwing spears, or when they're just screaming at it, imagining that there is a pterodactyl there, or an allosaurus there, or whatever. So our technology has changed. but what the actors have to do has completely stayed the same. It's the same process, which I found very, very interesting. Oh, by the way, I got this because there were three special interviews. One with Raquel Welch, one with Ray Harryhausen, and um, one with the so-called bad girl, who I found out was a Bond girl in two different Bond movies. I think she's the only woman to be a Bond girl in two different Bond movies. One of them was Thunderball, um, and so she was the bad girl. They have this really cool fight scene between her and Raquel Welch. Um, that was great. Um, so as far as recommending the movie goes, yeah, you're going to go into this, and there is some bad special effects by our standards. If you can hang with that, if you're okay with that, and you understand what the bad special effects are going to be, because it's a 1966 movie, it's literally almost 60 years old. It's 58 years old. Then you know you're okay with that. The movie is really interesting in that it has almost no dialogue because these are supposed to be the earliest, most primitive humans. And so they don't speak a lot of words. And most of the words they speak are names for each other, and they're not subtitled. Um, and there's only a few of them, but the context of what they're using makes clear what these few words use. And they actually have two tribes in the story, and they have different words for things. But there's only literally like three words they use or four words they use. The movie is about um, one herd of tribes people that they call the pig people, and one herd of tribes people that they call the shell people. The pig people have long, coarse black hair. The shell people have blonde hair. They live by the beach. The pig people live in caves up by a volcano, but they don't know what a volcano is because it hasn't ever erupted in their living memory. They're very, callous towards old people. They fight for their food when they killed this boar. The chief, he gets first pick, he gets largest, and if he wants more, he just takes it from somebody. And the biggest warrior gets the next amount, and then everybody else gets less, and the weakest people just all jump on it and try to steal what they can. Um, and the chief feels like his son is getting too uppity. And so he beats him up and chases him out and throws him off a cliff because he feels like his son is getting too uppity and he feels like his position is being threatened. And all of this is told entirely through facial expressions, grunts, and actions the characters are taking. None of it is in dialogue. None of it is in, politicking or whispers or anything. It's just what the characters do. It's just with their eyes. It's just with their facial expressions. Um, and it is such a human story. It's such a story about human motivations. It's about jealousy. There's a problem between the two brothers who are sons of the chief. Um, it's a story about betrayal because the one jealous, weaker brother, after his brother gets thrown off the cliff, he tries to take over the tribe by doing something in a weaselly, sneaky way. Um, and uh, it's almost Shakespearean uh, in that sense of Hamlet, which is about Hamlet is about the uncle kills Hamlet's father and then marries Hamlet's mother and then takes over the kingdom, and Hamlet has to, try and get revenge, but he's so bad at it, and he keeps on turning away from it. The things just go to pieces. Whereas if he had just done his thing and took a revenge, things would have gone much better. And there's problems with Laertes, and there's problems with the father, and there's problems with Laertes' father, I mean, and his sister, and she goes mad, and there's this whole skein of emotions. There's this whole skein of relationships, and the son who's thrown off a cliff actually survives, and because he's been effectively exiled, he ends up wandering out into the wilderness, and he runs across this other tribe of blonde people who he didn't even know exists. And he gets in with this tribe of blonde people, and he falls in love with Raquel Welch, or Raquel Welch falls in love with him, and there's also jealousy between him and another member of this tribe, because this other member of the Shell tribe loved Raquel Welch, but she, doesn't give him any time of day now, and it is this fabulous, simple, but really direct primal tale of human emotions that nobody is talking. It's all just told through emotions, all just told through actions. And my point is that in modern day movies, people would just be sitting down and yapping about this for hours. You could not get them to shut up about this. I saw a video last night. I only watched part of it, but it was talking about how everything is trying to be the Game of Thrones now, and how they're changing, like The Last Airbender or The Wheel of Time, because they're trying to make it Game of Thrones. And what they think people like in Game of Thrones is all those interminable scenes of people standing around tables talking about politics. But that's not what The Last Airbender was. And that's not what The Wheel of Time was. And so, in trying to make all these things, quote unquote, the next, and the Ring of Powers, same thing. Trying to make everything the next Wheel of Time, they're just making everything into the Wheel of Time. But this movie shows how all of these primal, simple human emotions has sort of that quote unquote political thing without it being about nations or kings or powers or small councils or flags or revolutions, but it's about interpersonal relationships. It's about jealousy. It's about revenge. It's about um, learning how to do things better, because the shell people are more, they have more technological advances than the pig people, but they're also kinder. They're also more civilized. And the two cultures are compared, and the pig people don't come off well. The biggest fault with the movie is the end of it just kind of comes out of nowhere, and none of the themes, none of the climax of the movie doesn't end well. They drop the story, and so it's really unsatisfying. It's like the writers got to the end and just didn't know where to go with what they were doing. They didn't know how to finish it. They didn't know how to carry through what they had been doing with the rest of the movie. Um, so they just, threw everything up in the air and said, okay, this happens. Um, and it had a little buildup leading to it, but didn't have a lot, and it could have been done much, much better. Um, so yeah, that was a letdown. The ending of the movie is a letdown. And I'm not saying this is a great movie. I'm not trying to build this up as another, Shakespearean play. I'm just saying that it has up until the end, it has kind of a simple story to tell and does it pretty well. There's a lot of monster fights in it that are interesting. The monster fights are, most of them drive the story forward. A lot of them are just used for spectacle. And um, it's surprising. Uh, I would give the story a solid B. For the time and the limits of the technology, the special effects are definitely an A. Um, and Raquel Welch is obviously absolutely gorgeous. This is only her second movie, I believe, so her acting isn't superb. Um, and and then again, she's trying to emote without a lot of lines to do it in. So yeah, I mean, it was a fun movie to watch, um, and I enjoyed watching it. It was worth watching, and paying for it. It was kind of a pricey video. I but I got some Amazon gift certificates for Christmas, and I haven't found anything to spend them on until like literally last week. So I decided to spend them on this. And so I got it basically for free with Amazon gift certificates that I tried and could not find anything to spend them on. So um, it was like, well, I might as well spend them on this. And it was worth it.
It sounds like it was a real treat to
Yeah.
to to sit back and enjoy that. I think in particular the animals in the stop motion animation. That's got to be half the fun, if not more. Just watching them try to bring dinosaurs to life on the screen.
The dinosaurs actually breathe. Their body goes in and out because they're breathing. And Ray Harryhausen said it's because they had air bladders in them that they could inflate and deflate. It was a nice touch. Um, in his interview, which is a special feature on the US cut disc, he shows how well articulated all of the models are, where they went through and they studied all the joints that they would have to have. And every single joint has an articulation point in it. Like every single joint, including all the small talons on the pterodactyl, so they could animate it exactly the way it would have to be to fly the way they had it fly. And the thing is, pterodactyls have a single membrane across the wing because they're basically flyers, or they're basically gliders. But the way the script had it, these pterodactyls were flying and then were actually hovering for the fight scenes. So he altered their anatomy to be bat-like instead of having glider-like wings. They have bat wings because they would have to be in order to fly. And then he animated them with bat wings flying the way they would have to scoot to keep them hovering like that. So he went through, and even when they are deliberately not exactly the same as historical pterodactyls, they're different for specific reasons because they have to be that way to be able to fly the way they were in the script. And so it looks right to have them flying like that. He thought everything in these models through. And I know people, are going to say, "Oh, well, that's not right," and I'm going to say, "Look, it's not right for a reason, but it's well thought out. It's well thought out for what it's supposed to be." And I think that's just brilliant. That's just a lot of extra work that you wouldn't expect for what, a quote unquote B movie.
And it's
Harryhausen was a master.
and it sounds like that it's that attention to detail that really brings those animations to life.
Yeah,
You can't phone it in. Like, you can't phone a claymation in, or you can, but
yeah,
you might end up with one of those Christmas specials.
yeah. I mean, I have seen bad claymation in movies, bad stop motion in movies, but this movie was not one of them. This movie had, high tier claymation, and it really, for the budget they had, they hired, you know, they hired the best talent they could, and in Harryhausen, they got the best talent in Hollywood for what he did. So yeah, it's a strange mix of absolute genius in a lot of ways, with some, admittedly, some shortcomings. I'm not saying it's a perfect movie, but I mean, to be able to put together a movie with no dialogue that you can immediately follow just by watching it, that's a hard thing to do. Um, they do have a narrator at different points, but that's more to set up the movie. He doesn't stick with you all the way through and tell you everything. He doesn't tell you what characters are thinking and stuff. Um, they don't lean on the narrator to make the movie make sense. The actors have to carry it with their body posture and their actions uh, uh, and their gestures and their facial features in their eyes. And
Almost like
uh,
a holdover from the silence.
yeah, it's it's really tough to do, and I'm impressed that, for a so-called B movie, that they set out to make something so difficult and pulled it off. It was a very successful film. It was Hammer's most successful film for a long time, is what they were saying in the interviews, especially in America. And one of the things they said was the reason why it was so successful because of Ray Harryhausen's miniatures, that people got to see animated dinosaurs on the screen for the first time that looked like dinosaurs. That didn't just look like, alligators with big frills put on their back. Um, so yeah, if you get a chance to watch it without paying $40 for the DVD, I would absolutely recommend it. It's possible it's available uh, in other places, but it's not available through legit streaming sites.
Gotcha.
I'm not recommending anything. I'm just saying.
No. No.
You might be able to find a DVD used uh, for cheaper than I found it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's cool. That's kind of a I'm glad you got to watch something sort of out of our wheelhouse, uh, for for a change.
Yeah,
And it's funny that it's interesting that you did bring up, uh, Deadpool, because I don't want to, 'cause I don't think in the latest Deadpool, and in fact, most of the Marvel movies, I think there's a lot of work and craftsmanship put into all the animations that they do. But I wonder, it might just be the medium itself where the end result just isn't the same. You don't necessarily get that beautiful lifelike action or animation the same way you get from a really good um, stop motion animation or a really good hand drawn animation, right? Um, but I don't want to spend any more time going over just how terrible computer animation is. It's great to know that the dated, like the bad looking, dated, cheesy stop motion stuff actually is really well done. They put a lot. It's not. It doesn't look bad and dated because it's poorly made. In fact, they put massive amounts of attention to detail to create something great. Um, and I'm glad we can still appreciate those.
Well, that's everything for me today. Do you have anything else?
Oh, nothing worth keeping on about. I'd love to get more into D&D next time we meet and talk up. Um, there's going to be uh, more movies coming out for the fall and Christmas movie season, so I'm sure there's going to be more pop culture stuff for us to talk about. So I'm excited for the next couple of months.
I don't even know. Oh, by the way, I started watching Penny Dreadful again. Because the last time I watched it, 2015, when we did our show about horror, when Brian was still co-host, I only watched the first season and then like half of the second season. We did a great show on horror, but I didn't finish watching the whole show. So I wanted to finish watching all of Penny Dreadful just to get it in. And I might be able to get it all done in time for um, uh, for a horror show before Halloween. Uh, so maybe if I can get it done in time for next week, or even the week after that, um, we could do either a Halloween horror show or just after Halloween horror show. That would be really cool.
That would be fun. That would be fun. And
Um,
in addition, next time we meet, looking towards next episode or two, we're gonna have a book review on Ursula of Ulm, the book by J.B. Jackson, the sequel to Shagduk. If you don't have a copy of that, you're gonna want to grab one, um, and we'll do a review as soon as I'm finished. Um,
I have a copy. I supported the Kickstarter for both of those. I have a copy of Ursula. I have a physical copy. That's one of the ones I didn't. I don't know if they didn't offer an electronic copy or if I just decided to get a physical copy anyway. One of the two. Uh, um, but then I have read Shagduk. It's one of the few books that I interrupted my regular schedule of reading to read.
and well worth
Um,
it too. So jump into Ursula if you get the time, because I'd love to do that review with you. But that's all
okay.
I've got. That's all I've got for this week.
All right, folks. I want to thank everyone who listened live, and I want to thank everyone who will listen later. This has been Geek Gab for Monday, October 21st, 2024. We broadcast every Monday, or just about every Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. You can find us on youtube.com/geekgab. Once again, that's youtube.com/geekgab. We're also available on soundcloud.com, on the Google Play Store, and on the iTunes Store. Just do a search for Geek Gab. You can download us to the device of your choice. Listen to us on the web or on your computer. We please if you like the show, subscribe and click the bell icon, get an announcement as to when we're going live. We are signing out for today, but don't you worry, don't you fret. We will be back.